Here we go.
A state in the United States has voted in Minnesota that Trump derangement syndrome is now an actual disability. Let's take a look at what is discussed here. And then we're going to discuss if this really should be an issue. If Trump derangement syndrome really is an actual disability. Let's take a look.
Well, if you keep up with state politics, you know that right now we're in the middle of the Minnesota legislative session. And the number one job your representatives have in this session is to pass a budget. But over the weekend, 5 Republican senators worked on something else. They drafted Senate Bill 2589. The legislation is what you're looking at on your screen, but pull that part out for a second. And this is a bill that modifies the definition of mental illness, adding a definition for Trump derangement syndrome. And
Okay, so let's go over this. A bill for an act relating to mental health, modifying the definition of mental illness, adding a definition for Trump derangement syndrome, amending Minnesota statutes 2024, sections 245, 462, subdivision 20 by adding a subdivision, adding another subdivision, be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Minnesota. So essentially stating that Trump derangement syndrome is now a mental illness.
A similar story happened to a young man in the Pacific Northwest about 20 years ago.
You can't make this stuff up. It's just win after win. Keep in mind, this was passed by all Republicans.
Minnesota. Basically, it's making up a new mental illness. And making up a new mental illness is really not what senators need to be playing with.
Making up a mental illness, well, that's no different than, say, making up a gender or making up a religion or making up anything that these guys have been doing for the last 4 years under the Biden administration by saying that people who identify as cats should use litter boxes. I mean, look, we've been living in a clown world for so long. It's a little refreshing to see them turn cheek and say, oh, well, guys, we can't play pretend here. Trump derangement syndrome is not a mental illness. Yes, it is.
You son of a bitch.
Illness is serious. It hits every community in our state, every kind of person, no matter who they voted for, and it can lead to devastating consequences.
Yes, I can't agree more. Devastating consequences, like setting dealerships on fire because you're upset with who's in the White House.
Disperse! Nothing to see here, please!
If that isn't a mental illness, I don't know what is. Here's the state senators who in Minnesota who put this together.
So I asked the Republican Senate.
Let's take a look. Here they are.
5 authors of that bill that you see here. And I was told they weren't doing interviews. I was given a statement. The statement said these men recognize mental illness as a real problem, but the Democrats need to get real and understand they can't blame Trump for everything. So
I don't see a problem with that statement. Do you guys? I mean, we can't blame Trump for everything, or can we?
they created a bill saying blaming Trump for something is a mental illness.